For the last time, I am not a demon hunter. I've been saying this over and over, and all anyone ever says when they find out what I do is call me a demon hunter. Demons don't exist. God doesn't exist. How can demons exist if God doesn't? They can't. What I fight are spiritual inhabitants from the other planes that came to our world through fan service. See? Not demons. Still don't believe me? Well, fuck you too, Steven. Here, you know what? I'll tell you about my first hunt. How about that? I'm loads better now than I was then, by the way. Okay, so it happened about 8 years ago. I was in a little Midwest town in late summer. The night air was hot and humid. It made my butt damp. Total swamp ass. I was on my way home from a Tinder hookup, which definitely wasn't the only one I've ever had, and I certainly made the sex at her. So anyway, I'm walking home through a dark residential alley where the narrow gravel road allowed for only one car to pass, and bushes had overgrown, reaching out in front of me. The summer air was thick and warm, making me sweaty and sticky. I'm feeling a little unsettled for some reason. Something felt off. It was like my spidey senses were tingling or something. It just really put me on edge. Then I hear this lady shriek and she comes bounding through her door and through her backyard just in front of me. She looks terrified and she's covered in blood. My first instinct was to run, to not get involved, self-preservation, you know, but the lady slammed against her stomach high chain link fence and flipped over it, landing awkwardly basically on my feet. Right in front of me, she shrieks again and tries to stand up, gripping my pants and then shoulder for support. She was pretty little thing, and if not for the weird way we met, I might have tried to talk to her and work my mojo. But that was not the time, and I knew it. I gripped her forearm, speechless, and she was all shaking and muttering with this 1,000-yard stare. I heard her say something about Rory and cut it off. I looked back to the house, and I entered some kind of hyper-aware mode where everything slowed down. I think I heard it called sword time before. It's when so much adrenaline dumps through you all at once that time dilates. You wanna know what I saw? Guess. That's right. I saw my first spiritual inhabitant, from another plane. In the same doorway was this 35-ish-year-old beer gut guy standing there in a wife beater with nothing on below the waist, and his legs were covered in blood. He had something clenched between his teeth, and that was when I noticed he wasn't alright. Like there was something off with him aside from the blood and stuff. He had teeth that were way too long. They were still squared off like normal, not that sharp pointy teeth cliche, but that made it so much worse. They were just so much longer than they should have been. They also had those deep yellow stains that you normally see on old smokers. And he was floating, well, hovering. Is there a difference? Why am I asking that here? You can't respond. I googled it. Hovering implies a mostly stationary levitation, while floating moves around. So he was hovering there in the doorway. The girl sees this guy and starts to shake and shiver even worse, and she's still muttering to herself. She backs away and starts to pull me with her, but I'm leg locked. I can't move. Total deer in headlights moment. The guy starts to float over to us, crossing the small yard in about 7 seconds. He looked almost like something was holding him up by the armpits. As he gets closer, I can see why his legs were so bloody. His manly bits were gone, and his mouth, that thing that was in his mouth. Yeah, the girl loses her shit when he reaches the fence, literally, and that snaps me back to reality. I didn't know a lot of what was going on, but I could tell that the girl was in trouble, and Dick Teeth was the bad guy. I fell into a kind of reaction-based moment. I can recall bits and pieces of what happened, but pretty much everything was done on autopilot. I shifted my feet and heard metal move across the gravel. I looked down and believe it or not, there was a convenient katana just sitting there. No, there wasn't a katana. I wish it was. That would have been so cool. It was actually about 2 feet of rebar. So the girl let me go and began to take small steps backwards. I locked on Dick Teeth. Dick Teeth's jaw is vibrating and he's squishing his thing. I can see where some of his unsettlingly long teeth have dug in. He doesn't even look at me though. He's totally locked onto this girl. I reached down and grabbed the rebar, noticing how rusty it was, and I remember trying to figure out when my last tetanus shot was. I didn't know the best way to swing the rebar, but it felt like I wouldn't be able to swing hard enough. An image flashed through my mind of a baseball player ready to hit the ball. They lift their legs, stomp, rotate at the waist, and swing through the motion. So I do just that. As I'm swinging this rebar, I feel like I'm moving so slowly. It felt like I couldn't have even hurt a small child if I had swung this rebar at them instead. But then I watched the rebar sail through Dick Teeth's teeth and disappear inside his mouth. Broken bits of his teeth go flying around and his chew toy gets ejected from his mouth, spinning off into the horizon. My eyes flicked up and he was looking at me, staring into my soul with these wide, emotionless eyes. I suddenly felt itty-bitty, scared. My rebar exited through this guy's cheek, and the whole process also broke his neck. Next thing I know, I'm jumping off the top of the chain link fence, holding this rebar in a reverse grip like some kind of contract killer that takes contracts in both construction and murder. The inhabitant is side-eyeing me, and it's yelling, I think. Blood and tooth bits fly out of his mouth as he watches me ascend upon him. Then I woke up in jail. But don't worry, the girl was okay, and I got out. The Heralds came and got me. I don't think they like me though. They are a bunch of lunatics with a hard-on for Jesus, and not like a little chub. I'm talking the whole 4.5 inches, rock hard and ready. They wear these corny white and gold robes and consider themselves the Lord's elite. Really, pompous shitcakes, more like it. The Heralds are a secretive group of religious fanatics who believe they are on a divine mission to protect the world from demons like Dick Teeth. They believe that these entities are the result of humanity's waning faith and that they must cleanse the world of these creatures to bring people back to the true path. Fucking psychos. They've got this whole hierarchy and structure too, complete with rituals, chants, and a strict code of conduct. They're essentially a cult, but with better marketing. They run out of an old church on the edge of town, which they've converted into their headquarters. Inside, it's all dark wood, flickering candlelight, and the faint smell of incense. The Heralds bonded me out of jail, so I guess they did something right. Sucks for them though, because I never made it back to my court date. Finally, the church pays the state without using it to leverage political power. Wow. Their leader, Father Gabriel, is this intense, charismatic guy with a silver tongue and a piercing gaze. He's convinced that I have a special role to play in their mission, despite my repeated insistence that I'm not a demon hunter. He's always trying to recruit me, saying that I have a gift for dealing with demons. Welcome, my friend. I'm glad you decided to meet with me. We have much to discuss. Father Gabriel said, I know you prefer not to be called a demon hunter, but your actions have proven otherwise. Your encounter with the demon was not a coincidence. You have a gift, a purpose that aligns with our mission, he began, his voice steady and compelling. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I told you time and time again, I'm not interested, and it wasn't a demon. I saved that lady just like anyone else would have. Father Gabriel's expression remained calm, though a hint of a smile played at the corners of his lips. He nodded thoughtfully. I understand your reluctance, truly I do. You see yourself as an ordinary person who did what was necessary in an extraordinary situation, but not everyone would have acted as you did. Many would have frozen or fled, yet you faced the demon and saved that woman's life. He leaned forward again, his eyes intense and sincere. We often resist the labels and roles that others place upon us, especially when they involve responsibilities we never sought. But consider this, demons are becoming more frequent, more dangerous. The world needs people like you, people who can stand against these threats. I crossed my arms, leaning back in my chair. Let's say I join your party of cross-dressers, what's in it for me? Kay. He leaned back, considering his words carefully. The Heralds are well funded, as I mentioned. While we are not a typical organization with conventional salaries, we do provide substantial compensation to our members. Your needs will be more than adequately met, and you will receive a monthly stipend to ensure your financial security. The exact amount can vary based on your level of involvement and the danger of the missions you undertake. For a new recruit, the stipend typically starts at around $5,000 per month, with the potential for significant bonuses for particularly dangerous or critical missions. He leaned forward once more, his eyes locking onto mine. So, while we can certainly discuss and negotiate the financial details further, I hope you see that what we offer is more than just a salary. It's a comprehensive support system designed to help you succeed and thrive. Does that address your concern? I shook my head, unimpressed. I don't care about the other stuff. That's only $60,000 a year to risk my life. I think DoorDashers make more. Double it, and I'll consider it. Father Gabriel's expression remained calm as he listened to my response. He nodded thoughtfully. I understand. Compensation should reflect the risks and efforts involved. Let's adjust that. We can offer $10,000 per month, bringing your annual compensation to $120,000. Plus, there will be significant bonuses for high-risk missions and other incentives. He paused, letting the offer sink in. Does this meet your expectations? And that's how I started working for the Heralds. They send me out solo, but sometimes I have to work with people. Gross. And the feeling is mutual. I don't pray to their baby-eating, furious, crusade-encouraging, nihilistic deity. Gabe knows this, so I only go out with another man when it's really bad. Not like date. I'll skip the boring stuff. Quick reference. I crossed my fingers while I swore an oath. I got trained. I got paid. I moved out of my mom's basement, and now I'm renting a top-floor apartment in the party district. Blah blah blah. Gabe sends me on my contract with Father Rob. He's this short, fat dude with a face like a pizza. His upturned nose, squinty eyes, and Friar Tuck haircut makes him look like he's constantly sniffing shit. He's a total joke, always trying to act tough but failing miserably. No one respects him. He's like a yappy little dog that thinks he's a pit bull. All arrogant and insecure, he brags about his divine mission one minute and whines about being unappreciated the next. Working with him is a nightmare. He's always complicating things and his humor sucks. I can't remember the cartoon, but there's this kid that wears a red tracksuit, has a big gold chain around his neck, and gold rings, and he's a total D-bag. He looks like Rob. You don't want to hear about this Porky Pig vegan though. Let's get to the juicy stuff. Father Rob met me in the dingy basement of the Heralds HQ, where they do most of their briefings. He was puffing and sweating like he'd just run a marathon, which for him was just walking down the stairs. Alright, listen up, he wheezed, trying to catch his breath. We've got a little one, a sick child in Rollins. Parents made report of a demonic presence, possibly a class 2. Father Rob glanced at his notes, then back at me. Alright, here's the rundown. Listen up because I won't repeat myself. What? I asked, and the idiot fell for it. I said I won't. He noticed my chuckle and the glared, slapping the folder down on the table. Take this seriously. His annoyance wasn't well hidden. I think he was embarrassed. After a few more moments, he picked the folder back up and continued. The possessed kid is Jerome Carter, a 9-year-old boy. Typical symptoms: pale, sleep-deprived, bloodshot eyes, and wild. Used to be a sweet kid, now he's a mess. It started a few months ago, talking to himself, toys moving, cold spots in the house. Parents brushed it off at first, then things escalated. Mrs. Carter found him in the kitchen at 3 a.m., speaking in some unknown language, eyes completely black. Scared the hell out of her. Mr. Carter saw it too. That's when they called us. I rolled my eyes. Cut to the chase, Rob. What's the plan? He glared at me but continued. You and I will enter the house in the late afternoon. We'll perform a full sweep, identify the demon, and neutralize it. Simple enough for you. Neutralize? I questioned. He's a kid. How do we neutralize a kid? Rob looked at me like I'd just asked him what color the sky was. We use gear, duh. Didn't they teach you anything? In training, he said, still wheezing slightly. I scowled at him for a moment before expertly dodging his question and then asked, gear? Rob's eyes lit up, probably the most excitement I'd seen from him. Standard exorcism kit, holy water, blessed blades, and salt. Lots of salt. We'll also have a few special items, a sanctified cross, anointing oil, and a portable EMF meter to track the entity's movements. Someone's horny for gear, I muttered. Rob turned a new shade of pinkish red, but otherwise ignored my remark and handed me a duffel bag filled with the gear. "Don't screw this up," he spat, looking at me with those squinty eyes. "The last thing we need is another incident like the one at the Ryler's house." After that, we walked back up the stairs, leaving Rob huffing and puffing again. I didn't know if he was actually going to be alright, and I was fairly worried about the Friar Tuck wannabe despite my disposition. We got into a white, almost totally inconspicuous white van, except for the mural of Jesus riding a scorpion in the desert, covering the entire driver's side with the words, "The Heralds," arching across the top of it. Do you remember how I said Rob had an awful sense of humor? I'll regale you with a few I remember from the drive. Remember this: after every punchline, he laughed so hard that he cried. It was so stupid. Here we go. Why was Adam a good runner? Because he was the first in the human race. Why did the grape stop in the middle of the road? Because it ran out of juice. Why did Noah have to punish the chickens on the ark? They were using foul language. Why couldn't Jonah trust the ocean? He just knew there was something fishy about it. Yeah, I'm sorry you had to read that. I've held that in for 8 years, suffering in silence. Who knew talking about my troubles would make me feel so much better? We pulled up to this rundown house at the end of a gravel road. 2-story house with a basement. The paint was peeling, the once white exterior now a grimy gray. The yard was a jungle of weeds, and the cracked walkway looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Heavy curtains covered the windows, making the place look even more suspicious. A rusty swing set creaked in the yard, and the porch light flickered like it was straight out of a horror movie. "This is fucking spooky," I said, taking in the shithole in front of us. "This looks nothing like that house from the pictures. Are you sure this is the right one?" Father Rob waited for a moment, and then took a serious tone as he spoke. "The devil can work in mysterious ways. I've seen ruination like this only a few times. This might be worse than we thought." Cool, that's what I wanted to hear. Fuck. The family was advised to leave the house at least. We stepped out of the car and at once, I'm hit with that tingling sensation. It almost made it hard to breathe. "Oh wow," I said, sounding winded. "This pressure is way more intense than the first guy." Father Rob looked at me, raising an eyebrow quizzically. "Pressure," he said. "Yeah, that sinking feeling. I felt it when I fought Dick Teeth, and I feel it here too, but it's much worse. Do you not feel it?" "Dick Teeth?" he asked, looking flabbergasted. At that moment, someone screamed from inside the house. It rumbled the earth beneath our feet. I froze up and stood there dumbstruck again, while Father Rob ran across the front yard to the door. He looked back at me once he was on the deck. "This is only for the strong," he said, prayed, then entered the house. That pissed me off. It felt like he was mocking me, taunting me, ass face, but it got me to move. I ran up to the house and shoulder charged the door. I collided with it, and it didn't budge an inch. I don't know how they do it in the movies, but I call bullshit. I bounced off the door like it was trampoline, spilling my salt all over the front porch and sliding back across the deck on my ass. Rob opened the door with a shocked and confused look on his face. "Did you just try to ram the door down?" "Shut up," I groaned from the ground. He offered me a hand to help me up. I grabbed it and it was slick with people grease. Disgusting. My hand slipped out of his and I fell back on my ass. He apologized and tried again to help me up, but I shoved him away and got up on my own. I grimaced at the slimy sheen on my hand, then wiped it off on Rob's robes. Normally, they get really mad when you touch their robes, but I think he accepted it as fair. And with that, we entered the house. Shutting the door behind us, the pressure I felt was stifling. It was like the constant urge to sneeze, but in my brain. The layout of the home was simple. The front door opened into the living room at the left of the house. To the right, beyond the living room, were the kitchen and laundry areas. To the left is the master bedroom with an attached bath. The house had 2 sets of stairs. One was a zigzagging ascending staircase off of the living room which lead to a guest room on the left side, and the shared bathroom and Jerome's room on the right. The second set of stairs led to the basement and was located just past the laundry room. The house reeked of ammonia. Don't know what that smells like. Think old cat litter. Father Rob looked around for a few moments and then called out, "Hello, is anyone hurt?" We heard the scream and he was cut off by the sound of something skittering up the basement stairs and into the kitchen, making the hanging pots and pans clang. A shiver ran down my spine. The pots and pans hit each other like a kitchen wind chime until their sound faded away, and then it was dead silent again. Rob and I looked at each other. He was sweating like a greased pig. I imagine I wasn't much better at that moment though. Pensive moments passed. "Hello?" Father Rob called out again, a little more hesitantly this time. "Nothing. We are here for Jerome Carter. If you're Jerome, can you please meet us in the living room? We want to help you." Another rumbling scream came from the right. It sounded like a little boy. Both Rob and I ran into the kitchen. The screaming stopped just as the kitchen came into full view. No one was there. We looked at each other and Rob pulled out a crucifix. Speaking over his shoulder, he told me to arm myself. Seeing that this was just a kid, I decided to use the rest of my salt. I opened the pour spout on the Morton's salt and held it club, ready to swing it down and pepper the kid if needed. Approaching the laundry room, the scent of rot invaded my nose. We both raised our free hands and buried our noses in the crook of our arms. Rob entered the laundry room first and stopped in the doorway, wide-eyed. I pushed past but stopped only a step beyond him. The laundry room was more like a three-walled closet with the washer and dryer on one side and a hanging rack on the other. The floor was covered in the messy remains of 50 or so small animals. I could identify the fur of raccoons, opossums, squirrels, and a skunk, and the brittle bones of several small birds. Flies buzzed loudly around the corpse pile, and I have no idea how we didn't hear the flies or smell the corpses even in the kitchen. We heard a faint creak from the basement staircase. Both of our heads turned to look at the stairs as something quickly clambered down them, out of view. Another chill ran down my spine. "Jerome," I called out loudly, feigning a bravado while now cupping my free hand by my mouth. "We're here to help you. Are you okay?" Nothing responded. Rob and I shared another tense glance at each other, then he walked past me and toward the stairs. I followed close behind. He smelled like old ham. Holding the crucifix in front of him, he rounded the corner to the basement, visibly shaking. His nervousness made me more nervous. We stood at the top of the basement stairs, peering into the darkness below. The light from the living room cast eerie shadows that danced on the walls, making the basement seem even more menacing. Rob's breathing was shallow and quick, matching the rapid thumping of my own heart. "Let's go," Rob whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding in my ears. I nodded, though every instinct in me screamed to turn and run. Instead, I tightened my grip on the salt container and followed him down the creaky wooden steps. Each step seemed to echo louder than the last, amplifying the tension between us. As we descended, the scent of rot grew stronger, mixing with the stale, damp air of the basement. The bottom of the staircase opened into a large, unfinished space cluttered with old furniture, broken toys, and stacks of cardboard boxes. The single light bulb hanging from the ceiling flickered intermittently, casting erratic beams of light across the room. "Jerome," Rob called out, his voice trembling. "We're here to help you." The only response was the soft rustling of something moving behind the boxes. Rob raised his crucifix higher, and I held the salt container like a weapon, ready to swing at the first sign of trouble. "Come on, kid," I added, trying to sound reassuring but failing miserably. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to help." A figure emerged from the shadows, small and hunched over. It was Jerome, or at least what used to be Jerome. His skin was pallid, his eyes sunken and dark, and his movements were jerky and unnatural. He was missing his bottom lip and blood stained the front of his once white shirt. He clutched a blood-crusted and tattered teddy bear in one hand, the other hanging limply at his side. "Jerome?" Rob asked again, taking a cautious step forward. The boy's head snapped up and he let out a low, guttural growl that sent chills down my spine. His eyes were entirely black, drool and blood mixed as he parted his teeth. He let a large glob of blood-red saliva fall from his mouth, and I watched as it fell and splattered on the floor. In the center of it was his tongue. He took a step toward us, his movements almost puppet-like. "Stay back," Rob commanded, holding the crucifix out in front of him. Jerome stopped, tilting his head to one side as if contemplating Rob's words. He stared at the crucifix for a moment. Then, without warning, he lunged at Father Rob and headbutted him in the chest. Rob stumbled backward, squealing as he lost his breath. I wildly swung the salt container and it scattered salt in the air, some of it landing on the boy's skin. Father Rob fell backwards and hit his head on the concrete floor. He was out cold. The boy landed on all fours at the bottom of the stairs and paused as his skin smoked where the salt had landed on him. He watched it sizzle, then his head snapped up to look at me. He had the deepest look of hatred I've even seen. It paralyzed me. He scrambled up the stairs on all fours, leaving me in the basement with Father Rob. I checked his pulse, and he was okay. I tried to lift him up and carry him at least out of the house until he recovered, but his was too slick. Seriously, Rob, at least shower before work. Instead, I had to flip a couch that was down there on top of him. Then I piled some boxes on top of that so if Jerome came back down and tried to do something to Rob, I'd be able to hear it. Seeing as the salt was tried and true, I kept that in my right hand. I spun my tool belt to put the blessed blades under my left hand in case force was necessary and moved quietly up the stairs. Now, I'm pretty dumb, okay, but I'm not dumb enough to call out this kid's name again. I reached the top of the stairs and quietly walked past the corpse pile in the laundry room and headed into the kitchen. I scanned the kitchen for any signs of the boy before I moved onto the living room. I think I forgot to mention that they had vaulted ceiling in the living room. I entered the room and moved along the right wall while I searched the house, salt held high. The only thing in the living room was the grandfather clock and its constant tick-tock, tick-tock. I looked up at the banister, knowing Jerome's room was up there. Still, I continued to work around the room until I made it to the far side, the master bedroom. I cleared the bedroom and the bathroom, pausing briefly to look at a family photo on the wall. Jerome was a cute kid. He looked almost nothing like that monster in the basement. I shuddered, leaving the photo behind. I paused at the bottom of the staircase, watching as it seemed to grow longer the more I observed. The staircase gave me vertigo, something I was not used to. I grabbed the handrail, willing my feet to move. Every individual step felt more and more oppressive. I paused halfway up the stairs and listened. I was listening for the inhuman movements. All I heard was the sound of the grandfather clock's tick-tock, tick-tock, and the racing of my own heart, noticing it synced up at a 2-to-1 with the clock. It was so quiet. I realized I was holding my breath and let it out. It sounded like a gale in the silence. I shook my hands in front of myself and started to move again. Once I reached the top of the stairs, I headed left to the guest room first. I opened the door, clenching my jaw as it creaked open. I looked at Jerome's door on the far side of the hallway, expecting it to fly open at any moment in protest to the noise. I refocused myself and checked the guest bedroom. Nothing clear. I stood in the doorway once more and looked at his door. I felt as though the walls were staring back. I sighed heavily, steeling myself, and crept toward Jerome's door. First though, I had to clear the bathroom. The bathroom has 2 doors, one for the hallway and one for Jerome's room. I hoped with everything I had that Jerome's door wasn't open. I quietly opened the bathroom door and it was closed to my relief. The bathroom went like this. The wall to the right of me held the sink and the door into his room. The wall goes left from there and has a linen closet, and then the shower. The wall straight across from me held the towel holders and the final wall held the toilet. I began my search. I decided to start with the shower because, of course, the curtain was drawn shut. I approached the shower curtain as though it were a bomb, ready to explode at any moment, creeping forward sideways, step by step. I took a deep breath when I got close enough and reached for the curtain, gripping it softly between my thumb and my index. I paused for a long moment, still holding my breath, listening to my heart beating and that tick-tock, tick-tock. My arm moved, almost against my will, and ripped the curtain open. It slid across the hanger line with a deafening clatter in the silence. Before me lay an empty bathtub. I exhaled a long, tense breath and then moved on to the linen closet. I was operating on precedence then, completely burnt out after that. I opened the closet door, making it creak loudly, and noted the roll of toilet paper on the shelf. There wasn't room for much more in there. I quietly shut the door and then walked straight over to Jerome's door. I grabbed the final door handle, pausing only for a moment before I opened the door, a level of acceptance settling over me. The room had an unnatural deep purple tone to it, and it smelt of putrefied, rancid meat. The air itself was rotten. On first inspection, the room was otherwise empty, except for the bed and desk in the room. Common sense tried to come back to me, tried to tell me to run because I wasn't safe, but I silenced it with another breath. I crossed the room and stood in front of the closet door, knowing this was the last place he had to hide. I wanted to throw up as a knot formed in my stomach and crawled up my throat. Nothing to it but to do it. I threw open the closet door, scattering salt immediately and bracing myself for whatever came next. That just so happened to be not a single thing. I visibly relaxed, dropping my shoulders, crouching and putting my hands on my legs. Then I noticed something strange on his desk, which was around the bed on the other side of the room. I walked over to it and picked up a small wooden box. It had these weird symbols on it, and some dirt still clung to it, probably from being buried before. It was a Dybbuk box. Jerome opened a sealed spirit box and got himself possessed. What an absolute shame. I pocketed the small box and suddenly all the hair on my body stood on end. I was going to die somehow. I turned around and it was Jerome, peeking over his bed, watching me, his face showing absolute ecstasy. He must have been hiding under the bed that entire time. I screamed, and he quickly skittered out of the room like a cockroach. He ran into bathroom, slammed the bedroom bathroom door slammed shut, slammed the other door slammed shut. I ran for the third door, the hallway door from the bedroom, but it was sealed shut. Not wasting any time, I tried the bathroom door, which opened as it should have. No such luck on the final door. I braced myself and kicked the door, but it was like kicking concrete. Frustrated, I screamed at the door. I pounded on the door and screamed for help. Rob was out there with that thing, and I was trapped, unable to do anything. I hoped to the universe that he would wake up and be able to defend himself. After doing this until my voice burned and door was spotted with blood from my fists, I walked to the back wall of the bathroom, collapsing against it. I was so exhausted. I propped my arms on my knees and hung my head. I closed my eyes, focusing on my breathing, completely recollecting myself. I needed to think about how I was going to get out. There had to be a way. After a few minutes, it finally occurred to me I hadn't tried the window. I lifted my head and shifted my weight forwards to stand up. I noticed for the first time that the linen closet was cracked open. Against the floor, impossibly low for the space, was the bloodied smile of Jerome. He had been watching me that whole time, and it showed on his face with total clarity. The sick smile with no bottom lip leaked blood. His eyes were bloodshot, almost completely red like he hadn't blinked once that whole time. Spit and blood collected against his chin and on the floor in a small pool. When our eyes met, he shrieked an inhuman noise. I was lifted by an unseen force and thrown through the hallway door. I blasted through the door like it was made of paper and over halfway across the hallway, stopping just past the banister. Thankfully, shock had my back and I stood up. Jerome was standing in the broken doorway. That intense rage was back on his face. He shrieked again and charged me. I grabbed what salt I had left and flung it at him. It hit him with a loud sizzle, and it looked like I had poured hot grease on him. He faltered and slowed down. Thinking quickly, I grabbed the blessed blades and threw them at him. The first clattered off the ground a few feet in front of him. The second buried itself hilt first in an emerging hole on his stomach. The blessed blades acted as a multiplier, instantly causing the sizzling salt to basically act like lava. He wailed in pain, grabbing the banister and practically melting in front of me. I didn't even think about what I was doing. I took 3 big, fast steps towards him, jumped and drop-kicked the little shit through the banister. He broke through the wood and sailed out into the air over the middle of the living room. He hung in the air for but a moment, then fell. He landed in a soggy heap, skewered on some of the banister wood at Father Rob's feet. Father Rob then began to say a prayer. Stupid, right? He was soup, the inhab was cleared. And before some self-righteous Karens say, he could have been saved, shove it up your ass. The kid died days before we got there. He was a corpse inhabited by a spirit that was sealed in the Dybbuk box. He was nothing more than a new shell for a naked hermit crab.